Semion Mogilevich, also known as the Brainy Don, emerged as a formidable figure in the international crime scene in the early 90s. Armed with a degree in economics, he's not just survived but thrived in the underworld through strategic intelligence and brutal force, employing war-hardened veterans as enforcers. His criminal network spans across global enterprises, including energy sectors and extensive ties with high-profile figures. Semion Mogilevich, often referred to as the world's most powerful mobster, has built a vast criminal empire that spans continents. With activities so varied and brazen, they have fueled global fear and speculation for decades. Accused of buying an entire airline simply to streamline heroin trafficking and even allegedly dabbling in the nuclear arms trade, Mogilevich's influence and notoriety reach far beyond the typical scope of organized crime. Mogilevich's criminal reputation took root in the chaotic landscape of the post-Soviet 1990s, a period rife with corruption, violence, and the rise of Russia's Red Mafia, a syndicate he is widely believed to control with an iron fist. Known not only for his terrifying ruthlessness but also for his remarkable intellect, Mogilevich earned the moniker Brainy Don. His economic expertise and strategic thinking, honed through his studies in economics, allowed him to build a shadowy empire that is practically impenetrable. This empire's operations range from extortion and large-scale drug trafficking to prostitution rings, and Mogilevich reportedly hasn't hesitated to deploy brutal force to protect his interests. With former soldiers from the Afghan war among his enforcers, his syndicate has been infamous for its violent tactics, reportedly leaving the bodies of rivals and associates so mutilated that other Russian crime syndicates were intimidated into submission or collapse. Mogilevich's influence seeps into the highest levels of power, with alleged connections to Russian-Ukrainian gas companies, reputed links to American former President Donald Trump, and even ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Despite these powerful and dangerous connections, he remains a free man, seemingly untouchable. Mogilevich's inclusion on the FBI's most wanted list has done little to disrupt his life. He still lives openly in Russia, shielded by powerful allies and a legal system that appears reluctant, or even unwilling, to challenge his empire. Semion Mogilevich, born either on June 30th or July 6, 1946, in Kiev, emerged from the Jewish Podol neighborhood with an early sense for exploiting opportunities others missed. Raised by Jewish parents in the then Ukrainian Soviet Union, Mogilevich's entry into crime was marked by a bold and morally questionable scheme during the 1980s, targeting fellow Jews who dreamed of a new life in Israel or the United States. Mogilevich posed as their facilitator, pledging to sell their assets and return the proceeds fairly. However, instead of aiding their immigration, he swindled these families, keeping the profits for himself. This scheme eventually landed him behind bars twice, marking his first brush with law enforcement but not deterring him from a larger criminal future. Meanwhile, many of the Soviet Jews Mogilevich defrauded resettled in Brooklyn's Brighton Beach neighborhood, where they built their own underworld networks. Remarkably, Donald Trump would later have dealings with some of these figures, relying on them to help bail him out of financial difficulties and steer him through a series of bankruptcies. By the late 1980s, the Soviet Union was in disarray, and a new era of lawlessness dawned over Russia. Veterans from the Afghan war returned home disillusioned, unwilling to settle into conventional roles. This atmosphere of decay and power vacuum laid fertile ground for the rise of the Russian Mafia, often referred to as the Bratva or Brotherhood, also known as the Red Mafia. Hardened soldiers and criminal minds alike saw the chance to build a powerful underworld free from government oversight. It was in this chaotic landscape that Mogilevich thrived. Known for his sharp intelligence and financial expertise, he quickly distinguished himself from more violent, less organized criminals. Mogilevich took up the role of chief money launderer for the Solntsevskaya Bratva, a prominent Russian syndicate. Through his company, Arbat International, ostensibly dealing in petroleum imports and exports, he funneled funds through tax havens like Albany, establishing a sophisticated network for laundering illicit wealth. Mogilevich's influence only grew, aided by connections to powerful figures in the criminal world. Among his close associates was Vyacheslav Ivankov, who rose to become the godfather of the Russian mafia in the United States until his 1996 conviction for extortion. Another associate, Monia Elson, worked with Mogilevich on laundering schemes and prostitution rackets, and openly acknowledged Mogilevich as the most powerful mobster in the world. Mogilevich's intelligence, ruthless tactics, and mastery of financial crime solidified his reputation as the Brainy Don, positioning him at the apex of global organized crime. In the early 1990s, Semion Mogilevich began laying the foundations of his global criminal empire, moving to Israel to establish powerful connections. According to Israeli intelligence, Mogilevich didn't just build a network, he created a bridgehead of influence, weaving connections that went well beyond the criminal underworld and into political circles. Known by a variety of pseudonyms, including Sergei Schneider, he managed to collect multiple passports from Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and even Greece, adding layers to his elusive identity. Around this time, Mogilevich married his Hungarian girlfriend, Katalin Pap, and together they settled in Prague. Here, Mogilevich operated under the guise of legality, opening a string of nightclubs that doubled as hubs for organized crime, especially in prostitution and trafficking. But his ambitions didn't stop there. In 1993, he struck a high-stakes deal with the leaders of the Solntsevskaya crime family. Together, they acquired jewelry businesses in Moscow and Hungary, which acted as fronts for an expansive operation involving the smuggling of rare artifacts, antiques, and religious treasures. From the homes of private collectors to churches, synagogues, and museums across Eastern Europe and Germany, Mogilevich's network systematically looted invaluable items, including Torahs and religious books, which they sold for immense profits. Not content with his ventures in art and trafficking, Mogilevich took a leap into arms dealing. By 1994, he had secured licenses to buy and sell weapons and rapidly purchased large portions of Hungary's defense industry, acquiring companies that manufactured everything from mortar shells to anti-aircraft guns. Reports even suggest that Mogilevich dabbled in the trade of nuclear materials. His ambitions reportedly extended to hazardous waste disposal, as he once tried to negotiate dumping American toxic waste near Chernobyl. One of Mogilevich's most audacious ventures was his acquisition of a defunct airline from a former Soviet republic. This airline, purchased for millions in cash, allowed him to traffic heroin from Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle directly into Moscow. With a grip on Moscow's Sheremetyevo International Airport, Mogilevich transformed it into what his associate Monia Elson described as a smuggler's paradise, exerting near-total control over the flow of illegal goods. As Mogilevich's operations expanded, the FBI began to take serious notice. His involvement in a staggering $150 million fraud scheme targeting a Canadian firm, IBM Magnex, caught their attention. Marketed as a legitimate magnet manufacturing company based near Philadelphia, IBM Magnex was a front. Mogilevich used fraudulent documents to inflate the company's stock by nearly 2,000%, leaving investors in financial ruin. The FBI was both stunned and fascinated by Mogilevich's economic expertise. As journalist Craig Unger noted, Mogilevich had perfected a skill that many criminals coveted, turning dirty money clean. In a remarkable display of cunning, Mogilevich played both sides. While deepening his alliances with Russian crime syndicates and even Italian mafia groups like the Camorra, he strategically fed intelligence to the Hungarian police and Germany's Federal Intelligence Service about his rivals. By sharing information on competing gangs, Mogilevich appeared cooperative, effectively positioning himself as an untouchable figure. This strategy also ensured that authorities in Belgium, Germany, and Austria couldn't pursue cases against him without jeopardizing active intelligence operations. By the late 1990s, Mogilevich's organization was a sprawling empire. An FBI report from 1998 identified him as the head of a network of about 250 members, including notorious enforcers like Vyacheslav Ivankov and Monia Elson, both known killers. His luxurious headquarters in Prague reportedly masked a dark interior, rumored to contain torture chambers and serve as a base for arming contract killers. According to an FBI agent, Mogilevich's ruthlessness knew no bounds. Victims don't mean anything to him, the agent noted, emphasizing that Mogilevich's most dangerous quality was his lack of borders. His influence transcended nations, making him one of the most elusive and formidable figures in organized crime. Mogilevich's title as the world's most wanted gangster was well earned, with his criminal footprint leaving an indelible mark on the global underworld. Beyond his ventures in fraud and the lucrative trafficking of weapons and narcotics, Semion Mogilevich strategically leveraged his resources to enter the energy sector, a move that would further enhance his power and wealth. Mogilevich set his sights on Russia's natural gas pipelines, which serve as a lifeline for much of Europe, supplying about 30% of the continent's gas needs. Through this lucrative foothold, he gained influence over a critical industry, impacting Eastern Europe's energy security. Mogilevich's involvement with energy attracted the attention of major political figures. Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, alarmed by his encroachment into the sector, took a public stand. Tymoshenko revealed that she had documented proof that some powerful criminal structures are behind the Ros-UKR Energo company. This was a clear reference to Mogilevich's influence behind the scenes of Eastern European energy companies, whose operations served as fronts for his criminal enterprises. Despite the layers of protection surrounding him, Mogilevich's luck ran out, albeit temporarily, in 2008. He was arrested on charges of tax evasion, an ironic parallel to infamous mobster Al Capone, whose own downfall came through financial charges rather than violent crimes. Mogilevich managed to post bail by July 2009, but his escape from full legal repercussions led the FBI to list him among its most wanted criminals, alongside Osama bin Laden. The Bureau offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to Mogilevich's capture. However, Mogilevich's refuge in Russia complicated matters for U.S. authorities. Due to the absence of an extradition treaty between Russia and the United States, Mogilevich has been able to live freely, reportedly under the protection of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Former Ukrainian President Leonid Kuchma shed light on this relationship, explaining that Mogilevich and Putin's association dates back years. He's on good terms with Putin, Kuchma stated, suggesting that Mogilevich and Putin had been in contact since Putin's early days in Leningrad. While no direct evidence connects Mogilevich and former U.S. President Donald Trump, there are undeniable links between Trump's business ventures and Mogilevich's associates. Among these was David Bogatin, a Russian criminal closely tied to Mogilevich's network. Bogatin reportedly used Trump properties for extensive money laundering operations and was also involved in the YBM Magnex scheme that left thousands of investors defrauded. Trump's connections to Brighton Beach mobsters, some of whom lived in Trump Tower, highlighted additional intersections between his business empire and Mogilevich's criminal network. Mogilevich, however, continues to deny all allegations. In characteristically defiant fashion, he has downplayed claims of a Russian mafia in the United States. "How can you say that there is a Russian mafia in America?" he once questioned dismissively. "Where are the connections with the Russians? How can there be a Russian mafia in America? Where are their connections?" Despite his deflections, American authorities have intensified efforts to capture Mogilevich. On April 6, 2022, the U.S. Bureau, in collaboration with the Department of State, renewed its push to apprehend him. Through the State Department's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program, a significant reward, up to $5 million, is now offered for information leading to his arrest or conviction, underscoring the high stakes in bringing the Brainy Don to justice.